All right, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for AAEA's February webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started. Today, Laura Rusiecki will be presenting PowerPoint tips for creating one-pagers. We'll be sharing announcements about upcoming events at the end of Laura's presentation after Q&A, so please stick around for that.
You can introduce yourself.
Oh, and I'm Alicia Hall. I'm one of the program co-chairs.
Hi, and I'm Linda Vo. I'm going to introduce Laura briefly. I know Laura because she was a former fellow on our team, program evaluation team in the Division of Violence Prevention at CDC. And for our team, doing a lot of evaluation, she actually pioneered developing one-pagers for us to communicate our findings effectively and in a very compelling way with data visualization. She's now with Westat as a health comm specialist, and I'll let her introduce a bit more about herself. But with her, a lot of our current fellows and a lot of our team's work now is starting to develop a lot of those types of materials that we're clearing for public distribution as well as internally. And so we thought this would be a nice webinar to coincide with a lot of the theme that we've been working on is data visualization, which at the end we'll talk about. There's a follow-up workshop for that data visualization workshop we did this past year. So on that note, I'm going to hand it over to Laura, but before I do that, I want to make sure if folks can see her screen, can you please type in the chat box to let us know that the technology is working okay. Great. All right, I'll hand it over to you, Laura.
All right. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I am so excited that you are listening to my webinar, even though it is our first day without rain in quite some time. As Linda said, I used to work in the Division of Violence Prevention, and I got to work on many one-pagers. I think that was my legacy. And now I work for Westat, and I work as a contractor for CDC. I still come around to the campuses. So right now I'm working on a grant in HIV, and I'm also working on a grant for the National Center of Birth Defects and Developmental Disabilities. And it's a balance between evaluation and comms and some strategy around social media communications. So it's very interesting. I miss injury a little bit, but I'm happy to be back, and I will jump right in. So the first part, I would just go over the agenda. So how to get started with a one-pager. And then I'm going to talk about some ideas and considerations to think about throughout the process. And then I'll do a demo of some of the things that I discuss that can hopefully help you out when you're creating things in PowerPoint. And then I'll talk about some lessons learned and highlight a few resources that I found particularly helpful in my journey. Something to note that I will say is that I have no digital media experience. I didn't have any when I was tasked with this project, and I really just jumped in and learned everything. So that should be hopefully an inspiration to you to dive right in and start playing around and learning things, and knowing that you don't need to have special training in this to create some really wonderful products. So the first thing, where to start? There are two questions that are really central to the process. What is the purpose and who is the audience? Before you can start working on a one-pager, really any document, you should really know what is the purpose behind this, what is the ultimate goal, and who am I talking to? Who is going to use this, and how are they going to use it? I would definitely suggest, if you don't have clarity on this, go to your leadership. For me, it was working really closely with Linda. So I went to her early in the process and was like, help me answer these two questions. And after you have answers, write it down, with an actual pen and paper. I used to think that, oh yeah, I'll remember that, or, you know, I'm working on the project, obviously it'll be at the front of my brain. But I was very surprised at how often I would need to go back and remember, oh yeah, this is who I'm creating it for. It's a nice way to kind of check yourself and make sure that you're on track and remove yourself from it. I think sometimes we get really excited about something and, you know, create something and then take it to the person who's actually going to use it, and it's not helpful for them in that way. So I think writing down what's the purpose and who is the audience can really help check yourself throughout the process to make sure that what you're creating is effective. So after you have clarity on that information, the next step is to sketch it out. Don't open up PowerPoint yet. Don't start creating graphics or searching for icons. Get out some paper and a pencil, and I usually have a very large eraser. You can use graph paper. Sometimes that's helpful. Oh no, can you guys still see my screen? I just got an update saying the internet is being weird. Are we good? Hopefully.
I can still see it, Laura.
Okay.
Yep, we're getting messages that people can still see.
Okay, good. Whew. So another thing you can use is graph paper. Oftentimes that helps provide kind of lines. I tend to write sideways, so it can help to have that line for when you're drafting. And doing it on a piece of paper can be really helpful because we all have frustrations with technology. You can't get this text box to move there. You know, I can't get the color of this icon to change. If you have just a piece of paper, you can get all of your ideas out, plan how you want the document to look. Obviously, it's going to go through iterations and change, but it's a nice way to start and something to build from. After you have kind of an idea, these are examples, what's on the screen are examples of the sketches that I created for some of the one-pagers that I worked on. And in the black is kind of all the pencil, and then in the blue was actually from a meeting that I had with Linda. We sat in her office and I explained some of my ideas, and she had some really great points, and that's what I put in all the blue pen. She gave me ideas on what data I could use, where to find some quotes and different things. So after you sketch it out, here are 5 considerations to keep in mind. One is where our eyes go. When you get a piece of paper or a report, you look at it, and people have actually been able to, they've done studies to follow where someone's eye goes on the page. And in case you were wondering, it probably is no surprise, you do not go to the first word in the top left-hand corner. Even though that's where you start typing, usually that's not where your eye automatically goes. It goes to images, it goes to icons, it goes to dark colors. That's where your eye goes first. Definitely to graphs, as long as they're not super busy. That's where you go. And then after that, people will go back to the words and usually, well, sometimes read the words. So that's why it's really important when you're sketching to think about the flow, somebody's eye, I think it's called eye flow. So where someone is actually looking. They usually start in the upper left-hand corner after they look at all of the images and the graphics and the dark colors. So be strategic with that kind of in the back of your mind about if you want something that people are going to pay attention to, put it in a dark color. Try to use an icon to grab someone's attention so maybe they'll read the little blurb that's next to your icon. So that's the first consideration. After that, think about color. And I love the rainbow. I have a hard time picking just one color. But there are some guidelines to good data viz as well as communication strategies. For a one-pager or a longer report, pick 2 to 3 colors max. At CDC, a lot of the centers already have colors in their style guide. So when I was at DVP, or the Division of Violence Prevention, I used a lot of colors from that. It was purple is one of the primary colors. So I really created the one-pagers using purple as the central color, and then I used green, which resonated with the audience and with the purpose. Those were the 2 main colors in the one pager that I did. And I will show you some tips later on in the demo about how to save colors so that you don't have to go back and re-enter them every time, because that is very tedious. And actually, if you're able to save the colors, when you download icons and you put them into your one pager, you can change the color of those icons to the saved color that you have. Whereas if you're on Noun Project, they want you to pay. So there's a way to do it to save a little money that way. There's also a really cool feature called the eyedrop feature, and it blew my mind when I learned about it. So I will demo that. And then if you have if the organization that you're working for, whatever you're working on, has one color, but you don't really know what other color to pick, there's a resource I'll share at the end. It's called Adobe Color. And this is a screenshot from it. And it helps you pick complementary colors. So if you're using, you know, a purple, it'll give you some ideas on other colors that would work well with that. And the last thing I'll say about color is it goes back to eye flow. Our eyes go to darker colors first. So whatever you're trying to highlight in your one pager, put it in a darker font, put it, you know, make it bold, use a darker purple rather than, you know, a lighter like lavender version. And then your graphics, since we're evaluators and are probably going to have a bar chart or some kind of data viz in there, whatever you want to stand out, put that in the darker color, and then make the other shades, the other parts of that graphic a little lighter. I tend to use gray, like a light gray, and then people immediately go to that darker part of the graphic. All right. The next consideration is fonts. I love this show, it's hilarious. It's called The Middle. And it says, shoot, I'm a sucker for a good font. Curse you, sans serif. And at first I didn't know what sans serif meant. But I will tell you since you're on this webinar. So serif just means like the little feet that are on the different letters of text as you type. So Times New Roman, I think, has serif. It's a serif font, meaning it has like little lines under each of the letters. And then sans serif, which means without feet, are fonts such as the one on the screen that says considerations that don't have any feet. There's nothing to kind of connect the letters to one another. There has been a lot of research done and a lot of discussion about which is better to use. Do you use serif or do you use sans serif fonts? And there's no real answer to that. I think to be 508 compliant, it's supposed to be sans serif, so it's not supposed to have the feet, but it's, you know, open to you on what's best for your project and if it needs to be 508 compliant. As a rule of thumb, I would only use 2 to 3 fonts max within one document. I know fonts are really fun and there's so many options, but try to narrow it down and just pick 2 or 3 and make sure that you're consistent. So all of your headers are in the same font and your body text are in the same font. One other thing that I think is really, really important is they have those little options up in the corner. I'll show you when I demo, but there's the bold feature, underline, italics. And it's really easy to just click on those when you want something to pop out. You're like, oh, I'll just italicize this and I'll underline this over here. What I've learned is underlining we should steer clear from. Try not to underline things because it adds darkness to the page. And remember what we were talking about with eye flow. Our eye goes to the darkest things on the page and to images. So if you underline something, you're calling the eye toward it, but there's not really a purpose to that line right there. So it would be better to bold the text. They find that your eye will be drawn more to kind of the bolded text and see what that says. Whereas if something's underlined, it kind of makes things busier, but it doesn't necessarily call attention to what is underlined. I hope that makes sense. And italics are really hard to read for some people, so we try not to use italics. I try to go for bold and color and not really use underlining or italics. There's also discussion about whether you should use all caps. That's another way that people try to call attention to things. As far as I know of, that's not the best way to call attention to something. It's okay to use, just capitalize the first letter and do the rest in lowercase. Because putting it in all caps, from what I have read, doesn't necessarily call attention or make people pay attention to something more than if it's written with the first letter uppercase and the rest lowercase. One more consideration. I think we have 2 more considerations. So the first one is think creatively about PowerPoint. I think we all have experience creating slide decks. A lot of the same tricks that you use developing slides, you can use in a one-pager. It's really a mix of shapes and text box and layering, incorporating pictures and graphics and icons, all of that is still in a one-pager. So 2 examples, these are screenshots from things that I created in the one-pagers. The top one is actually a pie chart, and I whited out the top half of the pie. I took an icon from the Noun project, and that's the 3 little people holding a trophy. And then I used text boxes to put in the different language that's in each like pie slice. So it looks, like a designer made it or a digital media specialist created it, but it was more kind of changing my mindset to think, okay, these are my tools, what can I create with it? And then the bottom image shows the power of layering, which I'll show later how to do that, but it was a picture that had been cleared from the comms team in the division. So I had clearance to use it. And then on top of it, I put a rectangle shape and I made it the purple, but I made the purple a little bit more transparent. I'll show you how to do that. And then on top of that, I put a text box that has the title and some background information about the project. So, go for it. Think about what tools you have in PowerPoint and how you can use them to create something really dynamic and more professional. The last consideration are icons. I think when I was creating these one-pagers, icons were like very trendy, and you wanted to put an icon on everything. They were so exciting. I think they're still pretty exciting, but we want to be careful with how we use them. Everything is rooted in where our eye goes when you look at a piece of paper. You want to call out information that's particularly important that you want people to pay attention to. And icons are a way to do that. So we want to be strategic with how we use them. This is an example, again, from the one-pagers. These were sites, local health departments that received funding to work on a youth violence prevention grant. So rather than just stating their names, I got images of the states, and then I used those at the top of one of the one-pagers to say, these are the recipients for this program. And then throughout the document, I use the icons in different, I think there's, in some of the data visualization that we did, we showed, which counties were implementing which programs. And another example is below, where we have the shape of California and then a blurb about what that health department is doing. So we didn't just put a graphic in at the beginning because it looked pretty. It was something that we continued to use throughout the one-pagers, that people could quickly see and say, oh yeah, this is Monterey County in California. This is what they're doing. This is what they're implementing. So icons can be really great, but make sure that there's a purpose behind them. All right, and now because we're evaluators, I thought I would spend a few slides talking about charts and how to pick a chart to put in your one-pager, because it's only one page. You don't have a ton of space, so you have to be thoughtful about what you're going to put in there. There's this ever-going balance between words and pictures. If there's too many words, people aren't going to read it. If it's just a picture, people don't understand what you're trying to say. So it's a balance. Think about the type of data that you have and what story you want to tell. Going back to those questions, what's the purpose and who's your audience? That can help guide what chart you want to choose and what is going to be most helpful for telling your story to the audience that you're talking to. Think about preferences when it comes to visualizations. There were several iterations of the one-pagers that I worked on, and I had to change the charts a few times because I would do something and get really excited and think it's great, and then I would take it to someone and ask them to look at it, and they didn't understand it because they didn't have enough words, or I used icons in a weird way. So, pick whatever you think is best and then get feedback on it, and keep working at it until you get the perfect chart. Some people prefer tree maps, other people don't like them. So just think about your audience when you're creating it. The next slide has some charts that I created and a few things to keep in mind. Number one, if you remember nothing else from this webinar, please remember that pie is for eating, it is not for data. There's many reasons why pie charts are not a good visualization for data. and I will not get into all of it, but just trust me that you should pick something else unless you're going to have 2 slices in your pie. If you have any more than 2, do not use a pie chart. But rule of thumb, try not to use pie charts if possible. Instead, you could consider using a waffle chart, which is up at the top. It's the square with all of the little squares inside of it. That is another way to use a pie chart, but it construes the data in a more effective way. A pie chart tends to change the way that we see data. It makes it so that it's not exact. I don't have the right words. But in the waffle chart, you can see exactly it was 41%. So over 40% of all facilitators relate to strong buy-in and partnership is the little blurb next to it. And it's very clear in the waffle chart that it's over 40%. The color matches the 40. So our eye goes to, the density of that color and to the number 40. Below that are 3 line charts, and it was to measure reach over 3 years of the project. In this graphic, it looks like a simple line chart, and it is, but note that, I got rid of a vertical axis. In these line charts, you try to make them as least busy as possible. So try to delete anything unnecessary in your graph. So I deleted the vertical axis. I deleted the legend. I put the numbers directly onto the data point. So it's very clear to the reader who's looking at this. 3 years on the project, these were the numbers. It increased over time. And the title says what we're looking at exactly, number of youth reached. So it's very clear. One thing that I will highly recommend is right at the very bottom, there's a screenshot of a website from Anne Emery. She's wonderful when it comes to data viz, especially manipulating Excel and creating these incredible graphs. She has a tool that's an interactive chart chooser, and so you can look at your data and see, do I have trend data? Do I have exploratory stuff? I'm trying to figure out what story to tell. Is this progress toward a goal? You can click on whatever type of data you have, and then she'll tell you what charts would be appropriate for that data. So I highly recommend using that, especially if you really like a bar chart, but your audience doesn't like it and you need some other ideas on how to present that information. She has a lot of really great options. All right, so now is the time we've all been waiting for, is the demo. So let's see if I can share my screen. All right, can you guys see, you should see the one-pagers that I created. It's purple and green. Awesome, okay. So I have a list of some things that I want to demonstrate, but at the end, if you have questions on something in particular, feel free to ask me to do that. Oh, come on, internet. All right, so the first one is changing the size of the slide. Normally it pops up with the typical slide size, but if you go to, let's see, design and over here to slide size, custom slide size, you can put in 8.5 by 11, and you can either put it as portrait or landscape if that would be better for your one pager. You can make it landscape, but that way you're dealing with a full sheet of paper and you can start building from it. The next thing about colors is if you go to, I want to make sure I'm in the right spot. Let's see. Yes, we were in the right spot. You can, in this box, go over to colors and you can go down to customize colors. And this is with the color. Like I think these are the colors for the injury center. So you can save them if you work in DHAP or another center, just take their colors and save them. So under Accent 1, you can put under more colors, put in the red, green, blue RGB code. That's something that you can find in a style guide. And if you don't have the style guide, I have a trick on how to find the RGB code. Let me make a note to show that. Okay, so you repeat that for all of the colors. Put in the RGB codes and save. And once you have all of them, you can rename it whatever you want it to be, and then hit save. I currently, because I work on a project in DHAP, I save DHAP colors. I save those colors as well, but we're gonna leave it on injury right now. The reason why you want to save colors that way is when you, let's say you insert a icon from the noun project, let's say. I'll try to do one right now. So I will go to, let's see, data viz. I think I have some icons saved. Nope. All right. All right, we'll do this. So here's an icon that I got from the noun project. And if I were to put in have the color would be whichever ones are default in PowerPoint, which I think are usually kind of the red, green, yellow. But I want this to match the rest of my document, which is purple and green. So since I saved the colors in here and I'm working from the injury center colors, once you have it saved, sorry, I should go back over here. Once you have it saved, when you are working on the slide again, if you go to like your font color, those are the colors that pop up. So these are the injury colors that I just saved. And it makes it really easy to be able to like, oh, this is my title. I want that purple. You can just go up here and click on purple rather than have to go into more colors, do a custom color, and then input the RGB code. If you save your colors, going back to the icon, once it's saved, then when you go to, where was it? Format, when you're formatting your icon and you click on colors, then it pops up in whatever color theme that you have under. So right now I have it under the injury colors. So my icon can be in any of those colors. I thought that was like mind blowing when I learned that. Another trick when we're talking about icons is if you don't this, so you have an icon and there's something in the, you know, corner that you don't like it's an alarm clock, and so there's like little things happening on here to show you that it's ringing, but you don't want that, you just want the clock. If you click on the crop feature, it comes up with these little black lines that go around the icon, and you just drag them and then click out of it, and your icon no longer has that little part in it anymore. And you can resize it either by clicking on that, or you can change it with the height and width thing over here. And that's a nice way, like when I was working on the, let's see, it's not in this one, but when I was working on the graphics for all of the states, it was nice to have the height and width feature over here, because I could just make everything, let's say like 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. And then this is because the ratio is locked. But if you go over here and unlock the ratio, then I can make that 0.5. And then you get your little alarm clock. And that, I did that for all of the state icons to make sure that they were all the same size. And then you don't have to go like this and get really frustrated because you can't get everything exactly the right size. So using these height and width things, and then if you want to do more, you can expand it by clicking on this little arrow thing here, and then it gives you more options in here. All right, so that is saving colors. The this like changing. Let's say that let's copy and paste. Let me find something to get a logo. All right, let me see. Didn't want to do that. Let's do this. Okay, so let's say that I want to know, let's say that this text right here, that I don't want it to be that light green. I actually want it to be this like dark green over here, but I don't know what color green that is. What I can do is highlight the text and click on the color, the like little text color box, and go down to eyedropper. And then it'll give you this like little, looks like a pipette. And there's a box with it. So if you put your pipette on whatever color you want it to be, and this like little square next to it will show you the color that you're trying to, you know, that you want it, whatever the pipette is over, it changes to reflect whatever color the pipette is on. So if I click it on that and I click, then it changes the color of my text to match that color. And that's a really neat thing to do. Like if you have a logo and you want to, but it's only online, then you can, you know, copy paste the logo into PowerPoint, match your text to that color by using the eyedrop feature, And then once it is that color, you can right click and go to more colors, and then it gives you the RGB code. So it's kind of a backwards way to be able to get the exact color of a logo if you don't already have it or you don't have the style. Let's see. Okay. Other things, eyedropper, putting in shapes and making them transparent. So up here on the kind of header of the one pager, this purple thing is just a shape. It's just a box. So I went to insert shape, and you can pick whatever shape you want. I find the rectangles and squares to be most useful, but you can use whatever is here. I've used arrows that can be helpful too, especially if you're creating like a bar graph and you want to show somebody exactly what this data point means. The arrow can be super helpful. So insert your shape, you just click and drag, and it's dark purple. But we want to be able to see the picture that's behind it. If you right click, or if you just click on it and go to shape fill, we still want it purple, but we want it more transparent. You can go to more fill colors, and then under transparency, you can change it. Type it in to say, I want it 50% transparent, and hit OK. Then your shape changes to 50% transparent. So it's still within the purple color scheme, and it still reflects that look and feel, but it's a way to kind of change things up to make it a little bit fresh within, you know, the restrictions of having like 2 to 3 colors for one, for your one pager. So that is how you change kind of the fill of a shape. And if you don't like it, then you can always go back and just change it to say, well, I want this like 90% transparent. And then it's a much lighter purple, but again, still within that purple color family. Next is layering. This is something that also was the game changer once I learned about it. So within this header, I have, let me ungroup these. I will show you how to group in a second, but let me, is it going to, okay. So we have this shape here. I'm going to delete that one. There's a picture, and then there's also text. Where is my text? It's white, so I can't see it anymore. All right, there is the text. Okay, so I hope you can see all of these things. I'm going to delete that box, but you see that we have a picture, there is some text. I'll make it black so it's easier to see right now. Some text, and then my purple box. Let me pull this over here. So how do we get them? What is happening? All right. So how do we get them to, you know, all layer on top of each other? So one thing is you can choose what is behind and what is up front. So when I had the picture originally, it just didn't seem to tie in very well to the rest of it. It just felt a little random. So that's when I put the shape on top and I made it transparent, and then I played around until I felt like it was the right level of transparency. I think it was about 70% transparent. I think that was it. But if I wanted to, let's say for right now that I want the picture first. So let's see. There's two ways to do it, but I'll do it through this ribbon up here. You can go to Arrange and then pick whether you want it brought to the front or sent to the back. So for the picture, because I was putting these other two things on it, I sent it to the back. I have the shape that I put this. All right. I put it on top, and I arranged to make sure that it was on top. If I didn't, I'll show you what happens if I don't. So if I send that to the back, all right, well, I don't know why that's not working. Maybe let's try this. If I bring the image to the front, so I guess the point that I'm trying to show is that you can put things forward and backwards within the page and layer it so that it makes it easier so that you can add like titles and things on top of whatever you're creating. And then it's just a matter of clicking what you want and bringing it to the front or sending it backwards. The last thing I want to show, and then we will do Q&A because we're running out of time, is align, distribute, and grouping. So on here, there's some text boxes, and we wanted them to, all be the same level. So you can click on all of them, highlight whatever you want aligned, and go back up to the Arrange feature into Align. And then you can align it to the top so that all of them are across the top, or you can align it where they're all in the middle. And that works. I tend to go with them aligning by the top, but it can also be helpful like if you want all of your wording to start at the same place, then you can click on all of those, go back to Align, and then align it all left so that it all lines up. And one other thing that I wanted to mention is grouping. So like creating this graphic was a lot of work, and it has an icon, it's a pie chart, each of these is a text box. So rather than kind of having to move every single little piece anytime that I move this around the page, I click on all of the different pieces, go up to Arrange and hit Group. I already grouped them, but an example is with these down here. You can go to that and it groups it all into one. You can still access your like little text box and make changes, but once it's all grouped together, then you can move it around like that so you don't have to keep shifting like 4 different boxes and trying to keep them lined up together, which can be really challenging. So those are all of the little tips and tricks that I wanted to show you in PowerPoint. There's a whole lot more that you can learn. This is just a taste of it. There's a lot of resources on and books and just information, and a lot of it comes down to playing around a little bit and becoming more familiar. I think, okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint. Really quickly, a few lessons learned. This stuff takes time. A lot of times people are like, oh, it's a one-pager, just, you know, throw it together, it'll be fine. But this was a very long process that took several months to do. It was definitely a learning experience, but make sure that if you're starting on this, just know that it takes time. It's an iterative process like anything. Just be aware of that. Ask for feedback. Try to talk to your audience whenever you can, get their reactions to different colors, types of charts, fonts, icons, all of that. Remember to always go back to the two central questions of who is the audience and what is the purpose, because that really drives everything else. Make sure you have clarity on that from the very beginning. And then I was in a talk a long time ago when I was learning a lot of these skills, and one girl's lesson learned was to take a chance and go for it. And that's really helped me push myself with one-pagers, especially on the project in violence prevention. After that talk, I was like, all right, I'm going to use a picture and layer a shape on top of it. It's definitely different from a lot of the reports we write or kind of one-page briefs that we create, but I think that they're more engaging and more effective. So just take a chance and go for it. All right, I think we have a few minutes for questions. So Linda or Alicia?
And we already have one question in the chat box from Amanda.
Okay.
She asked, what is the Adobe Connect resource for determining complementary colors?
Oh, awesome. I have one more slide with a bunch of resources, but I will jump into it right now while other people are thinking of questions. So the first two are some kind of pioneers in data viz and a lot of this information, Stephanie Evergreen and Ann Emery. They also come to speak at CDC if you guys are fellows or work there. I highly recommend going to their talks or classes if you're able to. They also have blogs for free and you can get it in your email. I think they're once a week. And their blogs are pretty manageable. I find, you know, the extra 2 to 3 minutes to read over them. And they have a lot of really great tips. Ann Emery is the one with the chart chooser that's really helpful. Adobe Color Wheel, this is the link to that resource. There's a few others, but that one is really cool where you can put in, you know, your one color and figure out what goes well with it, or it'll even give you ideas. Like if you know that the color is green, it'll give you other variants of green that would go well with that. Rather than having to use the transparency feature and figure out which level of transparency you think is the prettiest or the most effective. The Noun Project is where I get a lot of icons from. So that's the resource. You have to create an account, but it's free, and then you can pay for an account and you get more flexibility and some more options with icons, but I found the free subscription has met my needs so far. And then I listened to a webinar similar to this one about one-pagers by Evaluate, and they have a web page that has a bunch of really great information and resources. Their webinar is up there if you have minutes to spare to watch it. And then they have graph paper that you can use. That was what I used when I started sketching. So you can pull from those graphs, and they have some other fun resources to look around. But that is the Adobe color wheel that I was referring to earlier.
If folks have
questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask Laura directly. She'll be able to show additional tips if you guys have any questions or want her to do a quick, to show you quickly. Are folks still on the line? Did we lose everyone?
No.
Everyone's typing.
Laura, you just did that great.
I did so wonderfully.
Okay.
I don't know.
Hannah
but
said that was great. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want me to pull up the events for AEA? AAEA?
And thank you so much, Laura. Even like seeing this again helps me a lot in thinking about, I'm learning additional tips and tricks and resources that we can share back with the team. So thank you for doing this.
Of course, my pleasure. Let me bring up the screen.
Oh, and Laura also has good tips and tricks on coordinating webinars well and effectively as well. So if folks are interested in that, that could be a future topic as well.
What? I didn't get that. Sorry.
I was telling you off all the webinar coordination that he had done and how effective and efficient those things are.
Oh.
All right. I wanted to point out we have a couple of upcoming events. Can you hit refresh on that page? It's not showing up everything for some reason. Well, we have a upcoming committee meeting next Tuesday, and then we have a workshop on learning agendas. Oh, there you go. Can you keep going, Laura? Learning agendas on March 24th.
Oh, there we go.
And as you all know, like the federal government is really pushing forth with evidence-based decision-making, and so this is related to that, and this is an interactive workshop to help you, if you bring your own information and program, to be able to think about how do you do this at your own organization. And then in May, if you can scroll forward, in April, sorry, we have not announced yet because we're still nailing down the date, is we'll be having these evaluation dinners with experts, and in April, Anne Marie is going to be here in Atlanta, and those are for AAEA members only. At a discounted price of $10, you'll be able to get dinner and be able to have private time with Anne Emery for conversations. And depending on how the details go, sometimes it's discussion around article. It's modeled after civic dinners. And so that will be coming up in April, at the end of April. And then, like I said earlier, in May, Laura, scroll down a little bit more. We have a part 2 to our data visualization workshop led by Lillian Rodrigo. And we're doing something different. We're doing this on a Saturday. We'll be providing brunch, and we're asking folks to have some pre-work to review the workshop that she did in part 1, and then bring your work, if you have a data viz or a document or whatever, to bring it with you, and we'll be doing some peer discussion and then be able to help you improve your own data visualization. So that will be May 16th, and spots is limited because we're providing brunch with that. It is free for AAEA members, and I cannot remember the price for non-members, but it'll be worth it. Anything else, Alicia, that we want to make sure folks know?
I think that's it. I would just encourage you to call into our program committee meeting next week. If you have any ideas, we'd love to hear them. You can help us really form what professional development events we offer. So please join.
And thank you so much. We might be following up with a short evaluation form since we're all evaluators here to see if this time and format works for folks, since we've usually done webinars lunchtime in the past, but we're changing it up. And so thank you so much for spending time with us. And we'll let you go. It's right on the dot, 6:30. We'll let you go. So thank you so much for joining us. And we'll be following up with an email with the recording link, or if our members-only resource page is available, we'll let you know as well, so that you can access this and other resources that we've that different people have provided in the past.